Welcome back to the Futurist New Deal podcast. I'm here with futurist and transhumanist author and organizer, the vice chair of Humanity Plus, and his resume is quite long. He's a distinguished gentleman in this community. I'm very pleased to meet you, Jose. Thank you for doing this. How are you today?
Very good, Ben. It is a pleasure to be with you and with the people that follow you, because as a transhumanist, I totally support also the causes that you embrace.
Thank you. Thank you. And, I'm starting to sound like a broken record when I say this. The Futurist New Deal, the platform for the Transhumanist Party that I and my Arizona Transhumanist Party members devised, it was engineered with life extension in mind. So even though there's near-term economic policy and e-governance measures, all of those things were devised with a mind to creating a world that can sustain life extension and sustain indefinite lifespans, which you are the foremost expert on the subject. So I'm so pleased to be able to sit down and speak with you. I read your interview with Tina Woods, and you talked about the work of George Church, who's recently done published some new materials about gene therapies for life extension and human enhancement. And he is someone who has done so much work in this area, just bringing visibility, but also doing a tremendous amount of research. He could very well be described as a world's most accomplished geneticist, or certainly among them. And in that interview, you started to parse a little bit the idea of the role of data science, and you said that he thinks of himself as much of an enthusiast for advanced algorithms as data science as for emerging biomedicine. Are often speak of an interest in the various fields that relate, that all are contributed to by advanced algorithms, nanotechnology, and the life sciences. All of these things. What do you feel is most important in data science and emerging biomedicine? How do you think that we can best approach the move towards a universal longevity escape velocity, where everyone has access to this technology?
Well, excellent question. And let me begin by saying that, like most transhumanists, I believe in super longevity, super intelligence, and super happiness. Those three things: longevity, intelligence, and happiness. So if we begin by super longevity and extended lifespans, which obviously concerns to everybody, because we are all dying. We are dying. As we live, we are aging, we are dying. So we are discovering many things. To begin with, the human genome. We have sequenced the human genome at the beginning of this century, and this is radically changing medicine. Medicine is changing from the old traditional medicine that we used to have, and now it is becoming a data science. It is becoming all computational medicine, because most of the diseases and most of the human characteristics are encoded on our DNA. And once we know the DNA, we can apply big data and we can apply artificial intelligence to discover which are the genetic causes of diseases and the genetic causes of aging in general. One of the most incredible things is cellular reprogramming. And this was actually so important that in 2012, a Japanese scientist got the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine, Dr. Shinya Yamanaka, for this new discovery of cellular reprogramming. And he discovered that by changing just 4 genes, you could make an old cell embryonic, new young cell. And this was fantastic. This is like magic. So we know that just by gene modification, or what it is called also epigenetics today, we can change the age of the cells. And scientists are working on taking this into organs, and then into whole organisms, into bodies of different animal species. So this is really incredible, and to me there was a fantastic discovery that got the Nobel Prize very quickly, because the discovery was done in 2006, and the Nobel Prize was awarded to Shinya Yamanaka in 2012 for cellular reprogramming. Well, this and many other new incredible technologies like CRISPR, for example, that actually was discovered in Spain by Spanish scientists, Dr. Mojica, about 20 years ago. He discovered how bacteria defend themselves against viruses. And this technique is not just good for bacteria, it is good for us too. So that allows us to change the genome of living organisms when they are alive, in vivo or in vitro. So these are incredible developments, and that is why medicine is changing from the traditional medicine of the past, based mostly on how the body works and a very simple biology, and now it is relying on big data and computational power.
And these data science breakthroughs drive so many fields, but certainly ending cell death is something that unites transhumanists and other similar effects towards longevity, things that unite transhumanists, and more than I think it's fair to say more than any other interest and any other discipline in this community, and so it's a wonderful thing. At the same time, not everyone is a transhumanist. I happen to believe that 98% of the world's population would be de facto life extensionists if certain life extending interventions were available to them to their public health service. They would take it as a matter of course, but that's an unproven theory. But you mentioned you talk a lot about and I talk about it in other terms, but you talk a lot about an energy singularity, which I think describes the kind of network effects that we need to create a critical mass for a society that will not only have the technology, but also the cultural literacy and scientific literacy to accept a life extension. How do you see political organizations or any institutions advancing that critical mass?
Well, and since you talked about the singularity, many transhumanists also believe in something like a singularity, which is a time when technologies will be changing so fast and exponentially, of course, that they will surpass a current human level. The most basic singularity, the one talked about, for example, by Ray Kurzweil, is the technological singularity, when an artificial intelligence will reach human intelligence level. And this is also based on the idea of a physical singularity in the universe, like a black hole, for example. But then based on this idea of the singularity and a drastic change on technology, other people have been proposing other singularities. Like Aubrey de Grey, he has been talking about the Methuselarity, which is the singularity of Methuselah, when people will be living for 1,000 years, like Methuselah almost managed to do, at least according to the Bible. And then I also developed the idea of the energy singularity, which I call the energularity. And the energularity is this moment when we will have so much energy, because we will be moving from fossil fuels to renewable energy, mostly solar energy, solar power. And at this time, we will have almost unlimited energy, and we will move into a new civilization of abundance. Having constant and almost free energy will make us leave behind the economy of scarcity of today, and we will move into the economy of abundance of the future. And for this, we need incredible amounts of energy. And that is why it is so important to reach this energularity. All of these singularities, the technological singularity of Ray Kurzweil, the Methuselarity of Aubrey de Grey, the energularity that I talk about, are going to happen in the next 20 years. So it's really incredible. We are moving so fast, and this is changing exponentially, that in about 2 decades, we will live long enough to live forever, as we like to say. And this is actually the concept of the Methuselarity or longevity escape velocity. The longevity escape velocity also is the time that for every year that we live, we gain an extra year. And so we will actually be living longer and longer and longer. And then also we will reach a time when we will have rejuvenation technologies. So not only will we live longer, but we will not be aging. We will be rejuvenating ourselves. And this is again happening in 20 to 30 years. So we really live in incredible times. And once we move into this energularity of energy abundance, we will have an abundance of everything in the economy. We will have an abundance of food, an abundance of water, an abundance of almost everything thanks to new technologies like robotics, nanotechnology, and so on and so forth. So it is a fantastic new world. It is truly a new world from the human age now into the post-human age of the future, when humans will be enhanced, humans will be super intelligent, super longevous, and super happy.
Very nice, very nice. And if we speak to gentlemen like yourself, Aubrey de Grey, Ray Kurzweil, about the Methuselarity and the prospects of that, some people had been talking until quite recently about the year 2045. That's a number that is agreed on by some. In light of this publication from George Church, George Church is an advocate for life extension, but in a different, framed in a little bit different way. But he seems to have revised these numbers forward. Do you think that we are closer? Do you think that we were maybe looking at a 2030 or 2035 number for the developed world, or and also I would say that the title of this talk was to be what causation or corollary relationships are between the post-scarcity in the energy singularity that you mentioned, and life extension, the network effects of people becoming healthier and being able to contribute more robustly to techno-singularitarian effects more broadly. What kind of relationships do you see there as well? How do we get to that 2030 number for as many people as possible?
Actually, Ray Kurzweil is the one who likes to give numbers, and he talks about 2 days. And also, let me tell you about two immortalities, because I believe we will reach two kinds of immortalities: the biological immortality, the immortality of our hardware, and also the computational immortality of our software. So we will be able to upload our minds, and that will give us also immortality, but of the software. So those are two immortalities, hardware and software. Ray Kurzweil, in a way, represents the software immortality, and Aubrey de Grey represents the hardware biological immortality. But the dates are as follows for each one of these two immortalities: 2029 and then 2045. What will happen at those dates? And these are the numbers given by my friend, and I have known Ray Kurzweil for almost 20 years. And he talks about 2029, two things will happen. On the computational immortality, we will be able to pass the Alan Turing test. And so you will not know anymore if you are talking to a machine or to a human. 2029. And then in 2045, we will reach the technological singularity, when our artificial intelligence that will probably also include all humans, we will have more intelligence than humanity as a whole. So those 2 dates for software immortality or computational immortality: 2029, Alan Turing test; 2045, technological singularity. Now, for the hardware or biological immortality, the same 2 days, but for two different things. 2029, Ray Kurzweil defends as the time we will reach the longevity escape velocity, or the Methuselarity. That means that for every year we live, if we hit to 2029, we will almost basically be immortal, but still aging, because we will live from 2029 to 2030, and we will gain one extra year, and so on and so forth, every time getting more time, but still aging. Then the second date comes in, which is 2045. And at that time, we will reach biological immortality because we will have commercialized rejuvenation treatments. Because until that time, at the latest, we will still be aging. But we will be able to have new technologies at that time for rejuvenation technologies to become younger and younger. Ray Kurzweil talks about three bridges towards immortality. Bridge 1, Bridge 2, and Bridge 3. So what is each bridge? Bridge 1 is right now, is in the 2010s, that we have to do the good things that your mother told you about. Eat well, sleep well, do exercise, don't smoke, don't drink, things like that. That is Bridge 1, to do the things we have access to now. And they are not very technological in a way. Then Bridge 2 is in the 2020s, which are the first biotechnology treatments. And that will make us live longer to reach the third bridge, which is Bridge 3 in the 2030s, which is the first nanotechnology treatment. So Bridge 1 takes us to Bridge 2, and Bridge 2 takes us to Bridge 3, and Bridge 3 takes us to the rejuvenation technologies and to immortality at the latest by 2045. Those dates have been very consistent in the thinking of Ray Kurzweil for several decades. And I find that truly amazing, admirable, that he has also been on target between 80 and 90% of his predictions from last century. That is absolutely amazing. There is no futurist that has been so close on target.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. So if in talking about the Kurzweilian singularity that is focused principally on advanced algorithms, if we have this number of 2045, where we have such an amount of computing power that you described, we might have an earlier time frame or some time around that time frame where the ideas of governance are able to change significantly. The concept of an algocracy, an advanced algorithm run new form of governance where humans are in the loop, but there's a great deal of resources and institutional changes that could occur. Some people regard this as a dangerous set of talking points, talking about changing the nature of the nation state, establishing a more transnational kind of entities. As a person who is a left libertarian, as a person who is very interested in public policy, what advice would you have for me or people in my organization for advancing this kind of technological change in the political sphere?
Well, politics are also changing, in fact, because of all these technologies that make all the political process much faster, closer to the people, and more interrelated. So many forms of e-government, like actually in Estonia. Estonia is a very small country, but very advanced in e-government. It's maybe an example of how democracy will evolve. And democracy is the system that we have today in many countries, but it's also relatively new. The ancient Greeks, for the first time, created the idea of democracy, but actually they had slavery. In Greece, there was slavery, and that was okay at the time to have slaves in a democracy. Now we don't have slaves, and also we don't have the same type of democracy. It is a different type. It has moved from participatory democracy, like in the cities of Athens where you participated, into representative democracy, because our societies are so much larger that we need to elect representatives. So in the future, people who vote for you or other candidates, we will be closer to your ideas. We will actually give you direct feedback. You will get, I think, sharing information between all the electorate and the things that we need to do, and this will be feedback in back and forth. So our policies will be much more to the point, much more shared, and very futuristic in a way. In fact, so much that maybe in 1 decade, 2 decades, we might have a robot president. And so I will not vote for you, I will vote for the robot.
I'd vote for him too.
Exactly. And I think artificial intelligence will be fantastic. And it will be actually probably more neutral in many issues. Obviously, it depends on how it evolves, how it appears, how it is created. But I am very optimistic about artificial intelligence. And I am a bit worried about humanity as it is today. And I'd like to say, I'm not worried about artificial intelligence. I am worried about human stupidity.
Yes, yes.
And
Very much so.
human stupidity actually is very natural. We are naturally stupid. But if we can enhance our intelligence, that would be fantastic. We should be able to be much more intelligent. As I repeat, one of the 3 major goals of transhumanism, super intelligence, applied also to government, super longevity, and super happiness. So once we are more intelligent, not only will we live longer, we will be happier, and we will have better government.
And you know, in speaking a few moments ago about the critical mass effects that we could see towards a Methuselarity, I think we can also discuss in the same breath of what you were saying, critical mass effects in techno-singularitarian effects in governance and in across a broad area of disciplines. By talking about this kind of arms race between human uplifting and upgrading, like what we saw just a few weeks ago in the Neuralace presentation, and
Neuralink.
Yes, thank you, Neuralink. But there's a few competing companies that have BCIs. That one happens to be one that's a little more has cloning a few more neurons than some of the other ones that are EEG based. But there's quite a few companies doing interesting stuff with this sort of thing. But Elon Musk, he pitches this idea for the ordinary consumer, not for otherly abled people, but for the ordinary consumer in these terms. He says, we have advanced algorithms. We don't have the tools as human beings. We have the natural tendency towards stupidity. We don't have the tools to necessarily control them well. We need to enhance ourselves using this technology, which now exists and could be already going to human trials in 18 months or so. How do you see that arms race? Do you see that quickening the pace of the way that we're using advanced algorithms? I would like to be a person who's doing that. I would like to see a group of people doing that and creating and contributing more significantly to techno-singularitarian effects. How do you feel about that technology?
Well, actually, I think, as you mentioned, things are accelerating, things are moving very fast, and in fact, the days might be getting closer and closer to us. Talking about the Methuselarity, Ray Kurzweil said last year, in 2018, that he expected to reach his own longevity escape velocity in 2 years. That was incredible, because he said that in 2018, so that would mean that by 2020, he would reach his own personal longevity escape velocity. And he explained that is because he's already reprogramming his own biology in the way he eats, all the pills and all the supplements he takes. And this is fantastic because he's currently 71 years old. He was born in February 1947. And when he said that, he was 70 years old last year. And still he said that in 2 years, he will reach his own longevity escape velocity. But again, because he has already been reprogramming his own biology, which is not what most people are doing. That is why he says, even though for him it might be 2020, for the rest of the people, maybe 2029 or 2030. So what I'm trying to say with this is that things are already accelerating, especially for people who are going into these issues, including again, artificial intelligence. I think it could be fantastic if Elon Musk, as he announced with Neuralink, maybe in 1 year, but certainly in 5 to 10 years, we will have brain-computer interfaces that will make us much more intelligent. You will have the whole knowledge of Wikipedia and the internet in your brain. In 10 years, I foresee a future where you cannot say anymore, I don't know. Because if you want to know anything, you will have access to all human information immediately from your brain directly. You don't have to look for a book. You don't have to go to a library. All the knowledge of humanity will be linked to your brain. And so you will not say anymore, I don't know, because you can know almost anything. So this is moving faster and faster and faster, and this has implications in every area, including politics. You know, we take many bad political decisions because we don't understand the whole context, and because humans also don't understand each other well. We cannot communicate well. Imagine how communication will change when we have brain-to-brain communication, direct from my brain to your brain. For example, because my mother tongue is Spanish, I think still a bit more in Spanish. But if I could communicate with you, regardless of language, from my brain to your brain, communication will be enhanced. First, it will be much faster, because the problem of talking is very slow. Talking is a very narrow band communication system. That is why brain-computer interface will be really wide band, very broad band, and we need that. We need to communicate more, faster, and we need to communicate many other things than our thoughts. That will create more empathy among humans. So I think in the future, we will be much more empathic towards other people, towards other causes, because we will understand them better. I will understand my opponents, to put it that way, in politics better. And maybe we can reconcile many of our ideas. So the consequences of brain-computer interfaces and brain-to-brain interfaces will be dramatic, especially in politics, because it will change human communication dramatically. So this has a lot of impact in politics, and that is why the politics of the future will be much better, I am convinced.
As am I. As am I. You know, it gets into an interesting question of user interfaces. People who do these sort of things in industrial organizational psychology and students of user interfaces from a wellness and ergonomics perspective, they look at the technologies that we use now or used in the 2000s, touchscreens, and they say it's not suitable for the child to use it at a certain age in their formative years. Some people say this, that it's better to wait a little bit so that they don't have addiction mechanisms therein. Now, I don't feel that the same way about the technologies of the later part of this decade. Speaking of head-up devices and natural language processing in devices, these things kind of are a little bit more attuned to how people really live in a healthy way. Speaking is a pretty healthy thing for people to do. If you're talking to people a lot, you're probably a pretty healthy-minded person. If you're visually oriented in the world in a normal way, that's a fairly healthy space to exist in. But these technologies are, as you mentioned, the previous this future technology that you mentioned a moment ago with brain-computer interfaces. These technologies are also a little faster than previous iterations of typing and touchscreens. Do you think that? Do you see a healthy-mindedness in the brain-computer interfaces? Can I be a happy person with Neuralace, or how do you see that? How do you see that shaping up?
Well, I would think we will be much happier, not just a little bit, but much happier. But let me tell you that people always oppose many technologies. When writing was invented, some people said it was bad. We would lose our capacity to memorize. Even the ancient Greeks, some of them said at the beginning 1,000 years, 800 years before Christ, before the common age today, that writing was bad. Imagine that today. Some people, when also the printing press was created, thought it was a disaster, that we would forget about writing or reading these old manuscripts and so on and so forth. But the opposite happened. The invention of writing, the invention of books actually have massified all the knowledge of humanity, have made it more standard and more accessible to everybody. So today, everybody more or less reads and writes. That was not the case only 100 years ago. And 5,000 years ago, it didn't exist because there was no writing 5,000 years ago. I'm saying this because now we will have new ways to communicate and to express that we will be much more efficient, faster, and better. So that will make us also, I believe, better humans and happier humans, because humanity is all about interconnections. We want to be connected with ourselves, with our friends, with our families, with our societies, and we will be much better connected in the future. And we will understand other people's feelings and other people's thoughts in a much better way and very fast, which is important. We will not have to talk for 10 hours to come to an agreement. Maybe we can do it in 10 seconds, because I will transfer my information, my point of view. I will compare your point of view, and with the help of an artificial intelligence, we will take a very artificial, augmented, intelligent decision. So our decision will be augmented, they will be improved, they will be much more superior than they are today. And also, they will make us more happy. I believe strongly in technology, among other things, because I am an engineer. I love technology. I studied at MIT, at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So I love anything that has to do with technology. But also, why? Because technology is what makes us different from animals. Technology is what sets us apart from animals. We are animals with technology, in a way. And the more technology we have, the better our lives are. The longer we live, the healthier we live, the happier we are. When we were basically animals in Africa 100,000 years ago, we were just like animals. We were really animals with almost no technology. We lived and survived and bred and fed like animals. Then technologies were invented, like agriculture and many other things, writing, and we moved out of the Abraham Maslow pyramid of human needs. We moved from survival up, 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 and up. And I think we are progressing also up. We keep on going up within this pyramid of Abraham Maslow. And therefore, we will be happier. The jobs of the future will be more creative, more imaginative, much more about imagination, innovation, art, culture, and they will be much more fun. Once again, historically, jobs have evolved. 100,000 years ago in Africa, we were basically hunters and gatherers, all of humanity. We were just hunting and gathering food to survive, not even to live, to survive. Then agriculture was invented, and we moved from hunters and gatherers into farmers. And we were farmers also for several millennia. And then with the Industrial Revolution, we created many new professions, many new jobs, engineers, lawyers, economists, dermatologists, anything that you can think of. But there will be more and better jobs in the future, thanks to technology, which I repeat is what makes us different from animals. And so technology is what makes us human, and more technology will make us more human. In fact, it will make us transhuman, post-human.
Very, very, very exciting. I feel, as a person who takes an interest in public policy and who is undertaking this particular endeavor, promoting the futurist New Deal for the Transhumanist Party candidacy for president, I feel that it's not out of bounds to do some moral arithmetic. I think that the Methuselarity a universal longevity escape velocity coming as soon as possible is of great value. It's very important, I think, even relative to some of these other techno-progressive agendas. Now, I spoke to a gentleman named Florian Marcus, who's a presenter for the Estonian, he's an Estonian emissary for e-governance. And we talked about a broad issues, a spectrum of issues, mostly focusing on their iVoting system, their blockchain voting system, which is very good. But because they've had this mandate for 20 years, and this they've had this blockchain voting system for in place for 14 years, because they have been doing all of this e-governance stuff at this high level that, like you mentioned, they are now in a position to be using data science more directly in their very modernized public health service in that country. And this is setting the stage for the actual infrastructure that would allow for the constant monitoring of the individuals concerned, their health, and allowing to then have this series of implementations, this series of interventions, this series of preventative medicine technologies that would be available through a public health service, and effectively creating a nation of life extensionists potentially in the coming years, a little bit beyond what's happening in the United States, where we don't even have a public health service except for specific sectors of the segments of the population. What do you think about strategizing towards a radical life extension through these legislative measures and public-private partnerships in these medical institutions?
Well, actually, let me tell you that I just ran to be member of the European Parliament. I participated on the elections in Europe on May 26 to become a member of the European Parliament, which is the largest democratic institution in Europe, and it is actually much bigger than the US Senate or the US House of Representatives. In Europe, we have 750 members of the European Parliament, and I was running to be one of them from Spain. And we did this very quickly, and we got 7,000 votes, which is not bad, because it was a few months, it was very quick. This was in Spain. But we had two other longevity parties in Europe. Every country in Europe has the elections. And in Germany, they got 71,000 votes. Obviously, also Germany is a bigger country than Spain with more people, but 71,000 votes. And in England, there was also another movement that got 3,000 votes. So we got between 71,000 votes in Germany to 3,000 votes in England. And this was very fast. We did this very fast, just a few months before the European elections on May 26, 2019. So we are very proud that for the first time we took into public policy the idea of longevity extension and rejuvenation technologies. And one of my important points was the creation of the European Agency for Anti-Aging, because anti-aging is fundamental, especially in Europe, because Europe is a much older country than the USA. The European Union has an average age today of over 40 years, the people on average in Europe. So we are much older than people in the USA or in other nations. So aging is a bigger issue in Europe than it is in the USA. However, this is the same problem everywhere. The Japanese actually are also aging and aging very fast, and they have actually an average age even older than Europe. So it's a crisis in Japan. That is why they are so interested in anti-aging technologies in Japan, because they are aging, they are dying. And the demographic pyramid in Japan is not like a pyramid like this, with a lot of children and few old people. It's inverted, with very few children and a lot of old people. That is why also, besides anti-aging, they are working on robotics to do a lot of work, and also to help people and to be companions, and artificial intelligence. And let me also tell you something really funny in Japan. I had the pleasure to live 3 years in Tokyo, and I
Mhm.
love Japan, and it's a very advanced society. And in August 2019, for the first time, they had a robot priest. They had a priest in Kyoto who is a robot, an artificial intelligence.
Yes. I saw some images of that. I'd like to meet it.
Yes.
Yes.
So anti-aging is one top priority. And I would tell people in the campaign, if you want to live, follow me, like the Terminator, but in a good way. But in a good way, not like in the Terminator bad fashion, but in a good fashion. If you really want to live and live longer, younger, healthier, you have to vote for candidates who are transhumanists, who believe in life extension and anti-aging technologies that, by the way, are beginning to happen. So this movement, I hope, will grow exponentially too. So I hope you get many votes, and in the future, even more and more votes as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. I appreciate that that energy. Yes. I had one or two more questions, but I don't want to be taking up too much of your evening. A moment ago, we were speaking of the relationship between well, so we talked about the set of concerns in Japan. I visited Japan. You've spent quite a bit of time there. It's well known that they have an aging population, and that creates a labor vacuum, and also creates a set of public health concerns that are different from people with the younger population. And both of these things can be addressed by techno-singularitarians in many ways. The Futurist New Deal was devised with these concerns in mind as well, with providing a basic income through a specific revenue stream here in the United States, a federal land dividend that was also devised by Zoltan Istvin, the founder of this party. We kind of based some of our ideas upon many of his. But this addresses the same concern, the jobless apocalypse. The robot apocalypse, as it's referred to. I think that's a little bit misleading, but this idea that we might have a glut of man hours in the form of automated and advanced algorithms, and how do we see that all of our societies, these civilizations which need those man hours, are able to use them in the best way to ensure the stability and health of the people involved?
As I mentioned before, the jobs of the future will be very different from the jobs of today, which are very different from the jobs of yesterday. And because we are moving up the Abraham Maslow pyramid, the jobs every time are more creative, imaginative, and self-fulfilling, which is important because many jobs today are not self-fulfilling. We actually when some people, when they go to their job, they think it's like going to hell. They just have to work because they need some money. But once we move into the economy of abundance in the future, from the economy of scarcity today, we will have more resources, also produced by robots, artificial intelligence, and all these new technologies that will let us be more creative to do things that we really love, things that we really like. So we hope that this is going to be very fast because probably in 20 years, over half of the jobs of the future do not exist today. So we have to be very open-minded. We have to be flexible. We have to be open to the changes of the future because many of the jobs of the future do not even exist today. And some of those jobs will be related to this economy of abundance, to the energularity, to the methuselarity, to the singularity. They will be jobs related to super longevity. So a lot of works on health. They will be jobs about super intelligence. They will be jobs about connecting people, about being more intelligent. And they will be jobs about super happiness. So maybe more recreation, more leisure, more travel, more food, more movies, all of these creative things that we humans do with more technology that separates us from animals. So again, I think we truly live in incredible times. The jobs of the future will be much more fun, much more entertaining, much more related to us because we will want to move up the ladder to self-fulfill our dreams. Uh, and in 20 years, we will be able also to go to Mars, to go to other planets. That will radically change human mentality. Like when the first Europeans reached the Americas 5 centuries ago, it changed the whole world. So the discovery of the new world changed everything. And probably the same happened 70,000 years ago, 80,000 years ago, I don't know how long ago, when our first African ancestors left Africa and they went to the Middle East and to Europe and to Asia. That also changed humanity. We are a civilization of explorers. We are curious people. We want to learn more, to do more things. So I do not know what the jobs of the future will be, but they will be better than the jobs today. They will be more fulfilling, entertaining, and in an economy of abundance, the salary restrictions of today, the money restrictions of today become irrelevant in a way. The future of abundance does not rely so much on money. It will rely on what we do with our mind, with our brain. We are moving from manufacturing from the hands, manufacturing into mind factoring, the factoring from the mind. So it's a totally new world with super intelligence, super longevity, and super happiness. And that is important to say, super happiness, because
it is.
Why do we want to live more if we are not going to be happy?
Yes, it does bear repeating. And here in the United States, particularly in the developed world, in the United States, we are at an epidemic level of feelings of distrust for one another, feelings of distrust of governance, and that has effects on techno progress, I do believe. It's what my last point. What I wanted to say is you are an incredible presenter, with messaging in hard science, and yet you bring this kind of energy to the discussion, this kind of optimism to the discussion that we in the United States, we for whatever reason, we don't always have that. We haven't had it in recent years, and it breaks my heart a little bit because every time we are turning away from each other, every time we're turning away from building better forms of governance and better civil institutions more broadly, we're slowing to some degree the advance of techno progress. So I thank you for coming and speaking to me with this message of positivity, but also a message of discrete ideas in these areas relating to policy and public health and the march of techno progress more broadly. It was an honor to speak with you, Jose. Thank you for doing this.
Well, the pleasure is mine, and let me share some final thoughts, which I put in my book, which is called La Muerte de la Muerte, the death of death, which is the super longevity idea. And then I talk that we live in incredible times. We are living right now between the last human mortal generation and the first human immortal generation. So I ask my friends, where do you want to be? Do you want to be among the last people who die, or the first people who live long enough to live forever and to change the world and to be happier, to fulfill your dreams? Because the future is like love. I like to tell my friends, you have to tell your love partners, your family, that you love them more than yesterday, but less than tomorrow. The same with the future. The future, well, first of all, today, the present is best than the past, better than the past. But the future will be even better than the present. So also we have to believe in these things because many of these ideas are self-fulfilling prophecies. If we believe that we will be in a better world, then we will probably be living in a better world because we will work towards that. But if we believe that we will annihilate, eliminate civilization, we might sadly have that future because the future begins in our minds. That is why we have to be positive. We always have to see the glass half full, not half empty, because it is important. Psychologically, we create everything in our minds before we create it outside. So, yeah, my message is very positive. I think we are living in the best times to be alive, and we need to keep on changing the world and evolving. We are evolving, but we can evolve now thanks to technology, and more technology will make us more human. So have a fantastic future with humanity, with transhumanism, and with the elections.
Yes, thank you, sir. And it's also an honor to meet the vice chair of Humanity Plus as well. I've met a lot more people in this organization in recent weeks, and it's good to try and connect with everyone. Thank you, sir. Again, I'm humbled just to be able to have this conversation, and enjoy the rest of your evening and your weekend.
Well, the same, a pleasure, and live long and prosper.
Yes, to you as well. Thank you.